It says recording pending. I'm not quite sure what that, okay. All right, now it's recording. All right. So this is the January meeting of the New North Transportation Alliance, and we are a public-private partnership and a forum to jointly identify and address transportation issues in the area that we call New North. And this is roughly the area north of Bush Boulevard. It's in between the two interstates, Interstate 275 and I-75. And to the north, it includes the New Tampa area. And our emphasis is on finding and implementing transportation demand management strategies, working with employers in the area to help solve commuting issues for their employees. And this New North area is known as an activity center that generates a lot of traffic. So there are problems relating to congestion, including parking and safety, mobility and access, and other issues that come to light. So TDM strategies are often used in combination, and they remove barriers to using public transit, carpooling, vanpooling, bicycling, walking, and as well as teleworking. And TDM strategies include things like information and outreach, incentives and disincentives, programs and services, and the like. And so welcome everyone to this meeting. I think our attendance is a little bit on the light side. I had at least one person contact me that they were sick with COVID. This is a busy time for USF Parking and Transportation Services, being the beginning of the semester. So our chair, Raymond Mensa, was unable to join us this morning. I had attempted to secure a speaker from the Florida DOT to tell us more about a corridor study that's underway right now for 56th and 50th Street from the Selman Expressway all the way up to Fletcher Avenue. This corridor study has to do with putting in complete streets treatments to improve the safety of that corridor. They did hold a December workshop. I was told by someone from the MPO that there was a determination that the complete streets treatments would not go any further north than Bush. And I was trying to find out a little bit more how they came to that determination. But the service area or the study area that they're still looking at goes all the way up to Fletcher. We know that there's a lot of bicyclists and pedestrians that use that 56th Street and cross 56th Street north of Bush, along Fowler, along all the way up to Fletcher. So that's something that we're continuing to take a look at. So instead for today, I'm going to share a little bit of information about a TDM strategy known as transit benefits ordinances. And I think this meeting is also going to be perhaps a good opportunity to catch up on what your organizations are doing later in this meeting. I hope everybody had a great holiday and you're staying well. So how about if we could initially start out with a very quick round robin of introductions so everybody knows who is on the on this meeting. If you could say your name and your organization. I'll start. I'm Sara Hendricks. I work at the Center for Urban Transportation Research at University of South Florida, and I provide technical support to the New North Transportation Alliance. Let's see, Phil, could you?
Yeah, I'm Phil Winters. I'm the TDM Program Director at Cutter.
Great, thanks. And I'm just going to look down. I'm on participants, and there's a list of participants. Let me just ask Alicia Burden, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Alicia Burden. I'm a public affairs specialist at the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital.
Thanks, Alicia. How about you, Chatty?
Good morning. Happy New Year, everyone. Chatty Henrysai with USF Campus Planning.
Thank you, Chatty. Eric? Eric Larson? We'll go back to him. Rebecca?
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Hessinger. I'm with the Economic Development Department at Hillsborough County, and I work on Innovation District Planning, which is part of the New North Transportation Alliance area. Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. How about you, Julie?
Good morning, Julie Bond with Center for Urban Transportation Research.
Thanks. Arlinda?
Good morning. Arlene Curley. I'm the account executive for Commute with Enterprise, and in partnership with TBARDA and FDOT, we provide a van pool solution for employees to get to and from the work site.
Thanks. Ken?
Hello, Ken Bowden. I'm with the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transit Authority, TBARDA. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Marie?
Hi, Happy New Year. Marie Bowen with Parking and Transportation Services at USF. Stay safe.
Thank you, Marie, and thanks so much for joining us. I know this is a busy time of the year with the start of the semester, so I appreciate your taking the time out to join us today. And let's see, we have one other person, I believe, on the line, Richard.
Hi, it's Rich Picciani, USF Civil Engineer.
Thank you, Rich. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Oh, actually, Eric. Eric, are you here? Eric Larson. Okay. He is with the Tampa Innovation Partnership, so he'll probably be back in a minute. Let's see. I distributed the minutes to the November meeting. Does anybody have any corrections or requested changes to the minutes? Okay. Could I have a motion from someone to approve the November minutes?
Motion to approve, Sarah.
Thank you, Marie. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Is that Arlinda? Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's have the record show that the minutes have been approved. So I'll just go into my presentation on transit benefits ordinance, but I'd like to preface this with just a few notes. It's important to know that the New North Transportation Alliance has existed over the years as a grant-funded community outreach project that has been supported by the Florida Department of Transportation and Hillsborough County. Many years ago, the city of Tampa and the University of South Florida had also contributed funding. This past year, we have had some problems relating to the contractual instrument between USF and the Florida Department of Transportation. And so this particular project that supports the New North Transportation Alliance has lost its funding for this year. So we're without funds, and we're looking for some alternative funding sources. With that, I'd also like to mention that with those challenges, there's also some opportunities that may be coming up with regard to the new federal bill that was passed into law in the fall, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There's a number of different like new programs, including it's a carbon reduction plan that is required of states, where a lot of the things that transportation management organizations and initiatives, a lot of the activities that we already do can directly benefit some of the things that are needing to be accomplished through these carbon reduction plans. So we're hopeful that moving forward, we're going to be able to find some new funding opportunities for the New North Transportation Alliance. So talking about the Transit Benefits Ordinance, just to give a little bit of background, I sit on the Livable Roadways Committee for the Metropolitan, or actually it's the Transportation Planning Organization for Hillsborough. And as part of that, and with my network of professional associates in this area, one of them being Christina Costa, who also serves on the Citizen Advisory Committee for the Hillsborough TPO, asked me and Ken Bowden with Commute Tampa Bay of TBARDA to give a presentation to the Citizen Advisory Committee last October to talk about transportation demand management strategies. What is TDM and how can it be used to solve traffic congestion, improve mobility, improve air quality, and work on some of the other very important issues and goals in our area. so we gave that presentation and we left it with a few recommendations, and we were invited back to give a follow-up presentation. Actually, it was supposed to have been last week, and our item on the agenda was last, and they ran out of time. So we're going to be giving a follow-up presentation to their February meeting. But what we were following up with were some next steps. So in other words, what is TDM and how can we specifically use it, giving them some very specific ideas on where to start. And one of the problems is this area is a very car-oriented culture, and the infrastructure is very much in support of basically driving. And so I'm just going to share a few very quick slides that we were going to share with the Citizen Advisory Committee. If you can just telling them a little bit more about what transportation demand management does. It changes how people travel, when they travel. It provides substitutes for the need to travel, such as telework, and influences where people live and the routes that they select in order to travel. I like to use the Puget Sound Regional Council's definition. They're in Washington State, that transportation demand management helps people use the transportation system more efficiently. And next slide. And then, Christine, in the work that she does, Christine Acosta works for Pedal Power Promoters, which is her firm, to work with land developers and the municipalities to put in place bicycle services and amenities to enable people to use bicycling for transportation. And so she describes TDM as the blending of facilities, land use policies, and programming to achieve mode shift away from what we refer to as single occupant vehicle travel. In other words, driving alone. We target a lot of travel by way of driving in your private vehicle by yourself, simply because it takes up a lot of space on the highway. There's a lot of empty seats going down the highway. And considering that there's a lot of traffic congestion, we turn our attention to how can we fill some of those seats with regard to carpooling or helping people form van pools if they have very long commutes, and also encouraging people to use public transportation. So TDM will help achieve various types of goals, increase access to jobs, reduce traffic congestion, lower mobility cost per household, improve people's health if they, especially if they walk and bicycle, and also foster economic development and resiliency in the community. Next slide. Thanks, Phil. So we had a conversation with Beth Alden, who is the executive director of the Hillsborough TPO, and we were talking about, where do we begin? Where do we start in this area where actually, the public transit system has been underfunded. It's really actually pretty difficult to get where you need to go by riding the bus. Where do we start to help people use alternative transportation? And one idea that came up that we felt was a pretty easy request. We're interested in having the Hillsborough TPO approve a letter to the different municipalities in Hillsborough. That would be the City of Tampa, City of Temple Terrace, Plant City, as well as Hillsborough County. Ask these municipalities and local governments to consider drafting and adopting an ordinance known as a transit benefits ordinance or a commuter benefits ordinance. And the requirement would be of employers to require employers to provide transportation information to their employees. And the idea being that typically employees don't consider that they have any other alternatives, but in fact they do. A lot of these alternatives are provided by Commute Tampa Bay, the Guaranteed Ride Home program, the van pooling program, and the subsidy. There's a lot of other options that people have. They don't necessarily have to rely on driving their cars. So part of this simple requirement, much like requirements to provide, health information to employees would be to require employers to offer information about their travel options. And next slide, please. Part of this would be, for example, providing information in workrooms and public areas, posters. These could be followed up with brochures, information over the company intranet or the company newsletter with regard to what their options are in this particular area. And these are just two posters. There are a lot of municipalities throughout the United States that do something very similar to this, and various support organizations like their regional commuter assistance programs and transportation management organizations provide the materials, so the employers don't really have to do or generate anything other than receive these materials from support and service organizations to distribute to their employees. Next slide, please, Phil. And some employers who have new class office space buildings with lobbies, some employers provide these digital message boards that have all kinds of information about transit options. They may even provide route information, when the buses are arriving in front of the building, and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunity to simply provide information to employees about what their travel options are. So this is our first recommendation to the Hillsborough TPO. And then the second recommendation goes a little bit further, a step further, and that is to ask as part of a commuter benefits ordinance or transit benefits ordinance, to have the employer simply offer to the employee to set aside pre-tax employee income to pay for their transportation to and from work, also known as commuter transportation. What we do know from various surveys, including the one done by Robert Half Global Staffing, is that 23% of workers nationwide have left a job because of a stressful or bad commute. So this really is an issue with regard to recruitment and retention of employees. And so we think that these recommendations to require the employers to do these things will actually help employers recruit and retain employees. Next slide, please. And so the idea of transit benefits and a transit benefits ordinance includes using what our Internal Revenue Code already enables employers to do. And so Section 132F of the Internal Revenue Code enables employers to provide what is known as qualified transportation fringe benefits, and it allows an employer to provide up to $280 per month per employee to set aside that money pre-tax from the employee's gross income to be used for their transportation travel expenses to and from work. It can also enable the employer to provide subsidies for parking, for transit passes, and for van pooling. Next slide, please. And so, let's see. And so the idea here is the Internal Revenue Code enables employers to provide this qualified transportation fringe benefit. A transit benefits ordinance would require it. So it takes it a step further. And the simplest of transit benefits ordinance simply requires the employer to offer to provide the employee a pre-tax set aside of gross income up to $280 a month. And so basically the employee has that money pre-tax. It's not taxed. They use that money to pay for their transportation expenses. They can use the money to purchase parking. They can use the money for a transit pass or to join a van pool. It doesn't prevent an employer from continuing to provide free parking, as, for example, most employers do in the New North area. There are several reasons why a transit benefits ordinance would be a good thing to do. it aligns our public policies and support for our public transit system. We know there's a lot of effort underway right now with regard to improving public transit in the area. HART has been doing a number of studies looking at the possibility of bus rapid transit service that would come up to all the way to the New North area. There's studies underway for developing transit-oriented development overlays and areas that would serve the stops where this BRT system would provide stops. And so the transit benefits ordinance could potentially really dovetail very well with these efforts. It would also demonstrate business support for transit. Once again, what we do is we're looking for ways for the private sector and the public sector to work together to solve transportation problems. And so encouraging and getting employers on board to think more about transportation of their employees and how more choices and options could be provided to them is part of that. And then also treating employees equitably. And one of the main things with regard to that is that most employers, particularly in this area, provide free parking. And if you're an employee and you don't have a car, well, it's a benefit that you really cannot take advantage of. So the idea of the transit benefits ordinance is putting all of the different commute modes more on an equal footing and giving the employee the choice to use their pre-tax earned income to use that money however they choose, whether it's parking or to use that money for an alternative mode of travel. Next slide. And that was the end of the presentation that we were planning to provide to the Citizen Advisory Committee. And I have a second one that is a little bit more wonky. It goes into a little bit more detail that I was going to share as well. If people have any particular questions or would like to discuss it, what is your pleasure at this point? Do you have any questions, or what do you think about these recommendations that we are planning to put before the Hillsborough TPO Citizen Advisory Committee? I think the idea being here is that we say TDM is a great thing, but it's very hard to get it going in a community that's very car oriented like ours is. And so we felt that it was important to follow up in our discussion with the Citizen Advisory Committee to offer, what are some first steps, and what are some first steps that would be very easy to do and would not be a heavy lift, would actually be quite straightforward for an employer to participate in and do as well. And in our presentation in October, the Citizen Advisory Committee was very positive. They had a lot of good feedback with regard to how transportation demand management and commuter assistance makes a world of sense, particularly considering the way we want to move in a direction of a more multimodal transportation system, and also start to try to address some of these issues with regard to climate change and resiliency and equity as well. So Phil brought up one of the slides in the other presentation that I had that provides a little bit more detail. Transit benefits ordinances are also known as commuter benefits ordinances, and so it basically takes the enabling legislation that is part of the Internal Revenue Code and basically makes it a requirement to set aside up to pre-tax limit to purchase transit passes or van pooling subsidy or parking. And every year there's an opportunity to increase that limit. It did go up to $280 per month per employee for this year, 2022. So the transit benefits ordinance, it goes a step further from enabling to requiring, and it's simply to offer it. The employee may not be interested in it, and that's okay. Next slide. And so, yeah, so these are some points that I made in the previous presentation, aligning our public policies in support for public transit, demonstrating business support for transit in the Tampa Bay area, treating employees equitably by providing all employees the choice of how to use employer-provided qualified transportation fringe benefits. So not just those receiving the parking subsidy. And there's a number of other benefits. You know, it prompts employees to consider other ways to commute besides driving. For employers who provide the parking subsidies to their employees, the transit benefits ordinance is a good complement. It encourages use of public transit, including bus and van pooling. And in this area, we have a very strong van pooling program that is subsidized. A subsidy is provided through Commute Tampa Bay, and the van pool service itself is provided by Commute with Enterprise, represented at our meeting here today by Arlinda Caroli. It's like 170 van pools in this area. And we have a very strong van pool program represented by the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital, represented today by Alicia Burden. So what we know about this is that the van pooling program can really fill a very important niche to commuters, particularly commuters that travel long distances. So combined with Commute Tampa Bay's van pool program, employees who van pool also can take advantage of a $400 per month van pool subsidy. So this is provided by TBARDA's Commute Tampa Bay, represented today by Ken Bowden. So offered on a pre-tax basis, employees save on their federal income tax, and employers can potentially save on payroll taxes as well. I've seen some estimates up to 7 or 8% on their payroll taxes. So by doing this, by taking advantage of this qualified transportation fringe benefits, both employer and employees can actually save money. It can be crafted in a number of different ways. There are several transit benefits ordinances that have already been implemented by several cities across the United States, in addition to the state of New Jersey. And each one of them is different. So there's a great deal of flexibility in how a transit benefits ordinance can be crafted. It could be a tool for employers who want to incentivize bringing employees back to the office, particularly now that we're hopefully getting to the end of this pandemic. And it supports a mode shift away from driving to reduce vehicle trips, vehicle miles traveled, and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we're thinking that something like this could dovetail very well with a carbon reduction plan for the future. And I had mentioned several cities. These are the cities that I'm aware of. There may be more that are looking into enable or adopting a transit benefits ordinance. And there's different dimensions. We talked about the different flexibility in how you can craft a transit benefits ordinance. It can differ by way of the options for determining which employers are required to participate. What I've seen in reviewing the different transit benefits ordinances is that typically they'll say all employers who employ 20 or more employees or 100 or more employees, something like that. So it could be some number of employees, or it could be by geographic area. There are options for determining which employees are eligible, and it may have to do with those employees who work some minimum number of hours, whether they may be full-time or part-time, how long they've been employed, their eligibility for minimum wage, whether they're unionized, and the location where they're working. And then also there are options for a reimbursement limit. So the maximum is $280 per month per employee, but that doesn't require the employer to provide that much. It could be something less. Some employers, instead of this, decide to provide a subsidy. For example, they could provide a monthly unlimited transit pass to each one of their employees. That may cost something much less than $280 a month. So that's another example. Excuse me. So there's a number of considerations about a transit benefits ordinance. The fact is parking is often expensive for employers to provide. And I think that, in our car-oriented culture, employers just feel like, well, they take for granted that they just have to provide it, but it actually is an expense. And here's an opportunity to figure out a way to relieve employers from having to provide parking or provide as much parking as they already do. A lot of employers have to lease space, and that the cost of the lease includes the parking. So many employers already pay for free parking for employees, increasing the difficulty for employees to justify considering riding public transit or using some other travel option. So the more we incentivize driving, the less beneficial other modes of travel options seem. Also, we're aware that providing abundant free parking does not support our proposed bus rapid transit system by heart. It doesn't support transit-oriented development, where transit-oriented development wants to develop high density, so you don't want to use up a lot of that space with parking. Some employers are unaware that they have options for providing alternative transportation fringe benefits as enabled by the federal tax code. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's 2021, only 9% of workers have access to subsidized commuting benefits. So that's evidence to suggest that a lot of employers aren't even aware of this, that they can do this. And equity, diversity, and inclusion are considerations that a transit benefits ordinance could support. Only 3% of civilian workers in the lowest 25% wages have access to subsidized commuting benefits versus 20% of the highest 10% people who earn the highest 10% of wages. And only 5% of employees who work for employers with under 100 employees have access to subsidized commuting benefits. Next slide, please. And there's flexibility. It can be the compliance with a transit benefits ordinance should be based on the Internal Revenue Code for qualified transportation fringe benefits. Employers have flexibility to set aside employee pre-tax income in any amount less than the federal maximum, which is $280 per month per employee. This year, employers can alternatively provide a transit pass or a van pool subsidy valued up to the maximum per employee per month. And if it's anything more then that would just be part of taxable income. Employers can alternatively provide employee transportation, such as an employee shuttle from a transit station. And we actually do have an example of that. Tampa General Hospital provides a shuttle, and the picture in the bottom right is the Tampa General Hospital shuttle for their employees. They have remote parking that is not on the hospital campus, and they provide a shuttle from their remote parking sites to the hospital for their employees. So that's an example. And federal employers would be exempted from having to participate in a transit benefits ordinance because local and state ordinances cannot bind the federal government. So those would be federal employers like the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital, for example, or MacDill. Next slide. And so here are some implementation options. We're thinking, so how would a transit benefit ordinance kind of dovetail with some of the other ways of incentivizing and enabling and supporting people's ability to use alternative transportation modes? So transit benefit ordinances could be implemented in conjunction with opportunity zones, of which I believe we have one actually in this area. Eric Larson, you can kind of weigh in on this, particularly those with smart growth potential. And I think that this is, something that there's been a lot of discussion about, how do we redevelop, revitalize this area to make it walkable, bikeable, make it safe for people to use public transit as they walk or bicycle to a bus stop. Transit benefits ordinances work especially well where parking is unbundled from commercial property leases, and employers offer their employees cash in lieu of a paid parking space. That's known as parking cash out. So this is another strategy that gives more flexibility to both the employers and the employees, potentially saving money. Local governments could choose to require the unbundling of parking from commercial property leases. And I know that this is a conversation that the Tampa Downtown Partnership has been trying to jumpstart to have that be put in place for the downtown in Tampa. So that would provide added flexibility for not only office space but affordable housing, so that the leases for apartments do not necessarily have to include money that includes a parking space. Local governments could implement parking maximums to right-size the parking supply. Traditionally, parking requirements have required a certain minimum number of parking. And over the years, we have begun to recognize across the United States, municipalities have begun to recognize that we don't need as much parking as we actually have. And it actually goes against some of the efforts that we're putting into to create a more multimodal system, to having way too much parking. And then also Commute Tampa Bay, which is our regional commuter assistance program. It's operated by TBARDA and the transportation management organizations. That includes the Tampa Downtown Partnership. It also includes West Shore Alliance and our New North Transportation Alliance. We could market, we could implement, we could monitor compliance with the transit benefits ordinance on behalf of local governments. So those are a lot of ideas that we're putting forth to try to get a conversation started in Hillsborough, to try to figure out how do we help incorporate the use of transportation demand management strategies like a transit benefits ordinance to enable and support more people to use different forms of transportation. So these were recommended next steps for local governments: to introduce a transit benefits ordinance concept to the business community, conduct focus groups and roundtables with government leaders and transit advocacy groups, to run the TRIMS model. This is something that was developed at the Center for Urban Transportation Research. Phil Winters was one of the developers. TRIMS stands for Trip Reduction Impacts of Mobility Management Strategies. You can run this TRIMS model to calculate the estimated societal benefit to cost ratio as a result of reducing vehicle trips, vehicle miles traveled, reducing criteria air pollutants like ozone, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and safety. There are safety benefits as well, reducing traffic crashes as a result of developing a multimodal system. And also develop an estimated implementation budget. For example, what would it require to implement a transit benefits ordinance? And for example, that could be one full-time equivalent for outreach, implementation, and compliance monitoring, plus funds for marketing brochures, social media, website. And of course, all of that could be strongly supported by Commute Tampa Bay, as well as the TMOs, like New North Transportation Alliance. Adopt a broad-based ordinance, then conduct the rule writing process with public input. That was a recommendation that was given to us by someone who has been involved for years in the development of transit benefits ordinances, most recently the New Jersey State Transit Benefits Ordinance. The idea is that if you get too far into the weeds initially, the ordinance never gets passed. And so adopt something broad-based initially, and then conduct the rule writing process later with public input. Next slide, please. So what a transit benefits ordinance does not do, it does not require employers to subsidize transit or van pooling, though they can do so tax-free up to the $280 a month. The most basic transit benefits ordinance could require employers to simply offer to set aside employee income pre-tax to be used for their travel expenses. And of course, since it's an offer, the employee can say, no, I don't want to participate. A transit benefits ordinance does not stop employers from paying for employee parking if they want to. A transit benefits ordinance does not require an employee to ride transit. Next slide, please. And so these are some other resources. I think I've mentioned all of these. Commute Tampa Bay, that is our regional commuter assistance program. Commute with Enterprise, the TRIMS model, and we have access to a number of examples of transit benefits ordinances that have been implemented with cities throughout the United States. So that's the wonky version of an introduction to transit benefits ordinances. We think that this has a lot of potential in the area. Does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns or any thoughts about, what would be the challenges of doing something like this in Hillsborough?
I don't have any questions, Sarah, but oh, I'm getting echo. Is it better now? Okay. So this is Arlinda. I just wanted to share or say thank you for sharing all the information. I'm actually extremely excited about the 280. It's going to help out a lot of existing van pools. It's going to help us get a lot more on the road, especially, 4 is the minimum that we can have in a van pool, and sometimes it is a funding issue, right? Do we have enough? Let's look for a 5th member, which again, we want those van pools to be fully occupied. But if more people feel comfortable having 4 right now to keep that distance inside the van pool, then that 280 is really going to make a difference. That's an extra $40, right? On top of the $400 subsidy that FDOT or NT-BARDA offer. So again, I'm extremely excited about that. And also, I know that we've been really big on the federal side of things because of all the funding that they have available. Something that Ken Bowden and I have been really working hard on is, going on the private sector, talking to, hospitalities, all these, both hospitality hotels and hospitals, right? You mentioned parking concerns, if there's going to be a cost in the future or it's going to be a problem just because real estate and kind of the way we're trending and growing, which is fantastic. But this is a great solution looking at van pooling as an option for that. We've talked about recruitment and retention, right? Being able to increase that platform, looking outside of certain areas or maybe hiring from rural areas to bring more employers or more employees onto the site. So again, there's a lot of opportunity with van pooling. So I'm excited to see these numbers trending the right direction, and the pre-tax payroll deduction. That's something that we stress with everybody that we have a conversation with. Hey, there's more that you can take advantage of on top of the $400 subsidy. So thank you for sharing.
Great. Thank you, Arlinda. Any other comments?
Hi, Sarah. This is Ken Bowden.
Hey, Ken.
Thank you for the presentation, and just kind of want to echo on something that you mentioned, and that's making sure that this is, that we do this in conjunction with the business community. And I think once we get that presentation done in front of the Hillsborough TPO, and assuming that we have approval from them, or at least a tacit move forward, then I think it's really incumbent on us, the TMOs, Commute Tampa Bay, to really set up meetings with our business partners to try to bring them on board into this. That's going to be key with all of this. I just thought I would mention that. And, in future sessions too, we can plan to actually organize this. And, but I look forward to this. I think the idea of a TBO is excellent. And anything we can do to push this ahead, I think would be very positive.
Great, thanks, Ken. Does anybody else have any questions or comments, or what do they think about the transit benefits ordinance? Okay, all righty. Well, hearing none, I guess we can move on in our agenda. So our agenda is pretty open-ended. Oftentimes we have more than one presentation, and we sometimes don't get a chance to do our round robin updates, which is something that I particularly like. I enjoy hearing what other members are doing that relate to transportation. So does anyone have any updates that they'd like to share? I'm going to put somebody on the spot. If Rich Picciani, I have a question for you, Rich. So I'm in my office on the USF Tampa campus right now, and when I came in, I was on by way of Holly off of 30th Street, and got to the intersection of Holly and Magnolia, and there are some barriers that are blocking the rightmost lane, and it looks like some trees were removed there. And so is a right turn lane going in at that intersection? I was interested in finding out.
They're actually they're re-roofing the Stabile building over by Moffett, and they're adding new chillers on the roof. And it's quite an extensive project, so they're going to have to be putting a crane in that location.
Wow.
Be the only way for them to get without having to cross the road, a bunch of times a day and shut down the road. So they'll be installing a 300-foot crane right next to that building, and then they'll be blocking off that section of road. They're going to be opening up a little bit more of the barriers once they get the crane in place, but they actually will be closing that section of roadway off for probably a year and a half is what they told us, but hopefully it's less.
Okay.
It'll be quite a while. It's a really extensive project.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, the roofs on the buildings on the USF Tampa campus, they need regular maintenance.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Great, thanks, Rich.
Yep.
Are there any other updates? I guess, Chatty, I know that you and your office had been very busy last several months ago, updating the campus master plan. I know that was a huge effort. Are there any other things that are transportation related that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. So as you all have heard, we are looking into placing an on-campus stadium. So what that does is, instead of doing an amendment between now and having the master plan adopted, we're going to go ahead and incorporate that into the master plan update. So I believe we're going to go ahead and push the master plan out perhaps towards the end of this year and having it adopted in December.
Okay.
Having an on-campus stadium does exceed one or two items on our concurrency agreement. So we're going to have to work with the city on that. We are in the process of doing feasibility study. There are 5 sites being studied right now. So hopefully once we take it to the board in a month or two, it'll be down to 2 sites. And then a deeper, more detailed feasibility study will be further done during that time.
Wow.
So it will probably affect our traffic pattern. Most games are on Saturdays, so our argument to that is that we have 50,000 students coming on to campus Monday through Friday. Saturday is an off day for us, so hopefully it should not change the traffic pattern too much.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize that it was that far along. I had heard that there were considerations for a stadium, but I didn't realize, how far along it was moving. I believe that was what the #1 priority for our interim president, Rhea Law.
Correct. Yes, it is her #1 priority, and also our board chair as well. It was presented by USF Athletics, I believe, was it in December?
Oh.
Board meeting. They're hoping to have the first game in 2026.
Wow. Okay.
So we shall see. Depending on funding, we don't have funding yet.
So I'd be really curious to learn more about what is part of the feasibility study. Any considerations with regard to getting people to campus in ways other than driving to campus?
Yes, of course. I mean, we talked about not expanding on the site so much that people are still parking in the surface parking lots and also the garages that we have on campus, and perhaps busing them to the facility and things like that. So, but yes, definitely, we'll definitely get Cutter involved once we're at that point.
Great. Yeah, I'm sure we're very interested in that. And if there's an opportunity for a presentation to the NNTA with regard to the stadium plan, I know I would love to learn more about it.
Of course, yes. Yeah, and we're working very closely with the consultant who's helping athletics to do this. So definitely, yes, I can bring that up to him and see when would be a good time to bring this to the NNTA team.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Chatty.
You're welcome.
This is Rich again, and there's one thing I'm not sure if this group is aware. They are putting a light on the corner of Holly and 50th Street, so that should help with traffic, traffic calming in that area at least. And they are doing upgrades to the intersection at Fletcher and 50th as well.
Yeah, so that includes a road widening at 50th Street and Fletcher. I believe two right-turning lane, Rich?
Yes, and that roadway expansion goes about, I want to say about a half mile south of Holly as well, to get the turning lanes expanded in that area as well. So that will be encroaching on a little bit onto USF property.
So with that expansion and the addition of the turn lanes, I'm assuming it'll be a double left turn lane there, because I know at that intersection, that movement backs up quite a bit. Is there also going to be an extension of the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
They will be putting the sidewalk will go all the way down and connect across Holly. So from Fletcher, it'll go all the way down to past Holly to the existing sidewalk.
Oh, that's terrific, because I know in the past we've had residents who live in the apartments and condominiums along 50th Street needing access to the Hart bus stop on Fletcher, not having difficulty getting to it because of the lack of a sidewalk on that one on the east side of 50th. Just south of Fletcher. I know there was an elderly woman that fell because she was kind of walking in the drainage area there. So I'm so glad to hear that piece of sidewalk is going to be part of the intersection construction for that project. Thanks, Rich.
Yeah, I believe that from what I understand, a lot of these changes are actually because of they are driven through pedestrian safety. And then they just, the roadway improvements come along with that. But the reason this was all spurned was because of pedestrian safety.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
So this is Alicia from James A. Haley. Of course, the bed tower is under construction. It will open late summer, early fall. So we will have the bridge from USF and the hospital reconnected. So that's a big safety issue. And then also, the stoplight there at Richard Silver Way and Bruce B. Downs, we have had our part done for well over a year. We're still waiting for the county to install the light. So that it's another safety concern for people crossing the street, the people in the apartments next door. Many
Right.
of our veterans drive those little mobile things around, so we don't want them to get hurt. They can actually be able to turn left on the Bruce B. Downs out of the hospital.
Right.
And also the sidewalk will be extended down to, I don't know if you're familiar where the VA pharmacy is located on Bruce B. Downs, because there's no sidewalk there.
Yes.
So anyway, that's what I have to update.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, just so you know, Alicia, at our November meeting, James Huddock from Hillsborough County had given a presentation on several of the projects in our area, and he had talked quite a bit about 30th Street between Fowler and Fletcher, and we have a recording of that meeting from November if you're interested in hearing that.
I may have been on a holiday leave at that time. I think. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So that might be of interest to you. I know the county's doing a lot in the area, and of course, we're always very concerned with what's going on that stretch of 30th Street as well. Thank you. Thank you for that update, Alicia. Anyone else?
Hey, Sarah, I just want to give an update on best workplaces for commuters.
Great.
And so for everyone here, we are going to be announcing the new best workplaces for commuters 2022 list on January 27th at 2 p.m. And I'll have Sara send you out the registration link in case you haven't signed up. So looking at who's attending, USF will be on the list. VA, James Haley is on the list. I'm still looking for a contact for Hillsborough County, so I'm still working on that. Ken gave me a few contacts, but I still haven't been successful at finding someone to update their application, so there's still time to do that. And so, and also, Arlinda, I updated all your applications while Sarah was presenting, so you're good to go, and Enterprise will have 3 locations on the list. And so I hope that you will participate. And if you have any other contacts for membership, we're making last minute updates, but the list will go out soon, but there's always the option for next year. And that program comes with many benefits for the employer. So lots of great programs that you can participate in, and it's free for Florida employees because it is sponsored by FDOT. So you don't have to make the payment that everyone else does nationwide because we do have FDOT supporting this program. So that's great news also. And then the other announcement I wanted to make is we will hold a Love to Ride promotion during Florida Bike Month, which is during March. And we're getting out all of the information on that in the next couple of weeks. We have a very strong base here in FDOT District 7. It's for the entire 5-county region competing, but it is a business challenge. And I know many of you are already signed up, but if you're not, please get your business signed up. And we're going to have lots of fun and prizes. We already have several mayor's rides scheduled. We have the ride with the mayor of Temple Terrace scheduled. I can give this all to you, Sarah, to send out. The mayor of Tampa will be scheduling some activities and rides during March, and there's all kinds of different things going on. So if you are interested in participating in an event, holding an event, let me know. But signing up for the Love to Ride is really important. And we did have the challenge that during Mobility Week, and I hate to say that UF beat USF. Barely. I was trying to get everyone involved. So if you can, you USF folks on here, sign up and log, because we this will be just a District 7 challenge, so we won't be competing against them this time, but we'll probably have another mobility challenge. So get out and log your rides, and it's a lot of fun. We did get 3rd place in the state. The city of Orlando got 1st place. And then UF was 2nd and USF was 3rd. So we were competing against everyone in our employee size. It wasn't just universities, but we did get a 3rd place, which I was hoping for a 2nd place. So there's always next time. That's so right. Lots of fun for Bike Month coming up if you can participate.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And in the New North area, as more and more bicycle and pedestrian improvements are being put in place, it is becoming safer, it's becoming more convenient, it's becoming more comfortable to ride your bike. So that's great. Any other updates from anyone?
Yeah, I thought I would just give a quick plug. On January 27th at 1:00 p.m., we're going to host a future of van pooling discussion. And we'll have representatives from Commute with Enterprise, their corporate office, to talk a little bit about what van pooling will be what it will look like, over the next 5 years or so. And it'll give us a chance too, I think, to bring up this discussion of the TBO, and potentially, to talk about other things like where can we use Vanpool to help with resiliency, to help with economic opportunity in the Tampa Bay area. So I look forward to being a part of that. And I will send out an invite here shortly. And Sarah, you could forward that to the folks at the New North Transportation Alliance. That'd be great.
Great. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah. Let's see. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So I think we're coming pretty much to the close of our meeting. I did want to ask, so our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, March 9th. And I'm always looking for topics for presenters, or if there are interests, questions, concerns that you would like explored during our NNTA meetings. That's the purpose of these meetings. So I'm always very interested in topics and ideas. If there's anything that you would like to learn more about that's going on either in our area or in the region, or perhaps what's going on in other parts of the country that we could learn from, borrow from, those are all potential topics that we could discuss during our meetings. So, any other comments before we close? All right. Well, thank you so much for attending our meeting. I've enjoyed it. I've learned some new things, and I hope all of you have learned some new things too. And looking forward to March when we can meet again. All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna close the meeting. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Have a good day.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Stay well.